Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Executive Uninterrupted, where we have unscripted conversations around the issues shaping the payer and provider landscape. I'm really excited to be hosting Rachel Strauss on the podcast today. She is the founder and CEO of PBM Princess. Yeah, that's a name, isn't it? We're going to dig into how it was chosen, what she's doing, and how it's making a difference for your business. So, Rachel, really excited that you joined us today.
Thank you. And the motivating factor for this was not just because it's called Uninterrupted, which is a dream for someone like me who loves it's a dream to be here.
I love it, Rachel. I love it. Before we kick things off, tell me a little bit about you and what brought you into the healthcare space.
Sure. So I dreamed as a little girl to work in the payer side of healthcare solve. That is a total lie. No, I mean, I'll kind of give the long version, but shortened. I went to college with a vision of being a physician. My father's a doctor. Grandfather was a pharmacist. Somewhere through organic chemistry and needing to study, that dream quickly dissipated. But I ended up working for those. I know you're on the West Coast where we're filming, but I'm a Midwesterner, Big Ten, Michigan State girl, go green. I ended up for our school newspaper, fell in love with journalism. I thought maybe one day I could be a healthcare reporter. After I graduated, it was around the time of 9/11. So for listeners trying to figure out how old I am, there it is. I graduated in 2002, right after the Twin Towers, and the landscape of journalism changed tremendously.
Massively.
I ended up not wanting to move to New York, where my dream was to work for the New York Times science reporter one day. I ended up staying home, working for Gannett newspapers, freelancing. And at that same time, my stepmom, close family member, owned and operated her own what's called pharmacy benefit manager. Had no clue what that stood for. She was trying to get me into good work-life balance and more work than life because I had the life balance at 22 years old. And she said, why don't you come, not just freelance, but work for me and get a set schedule going every day? And so I said, okay, I had no idea, and was employee number 11 at this pharmacy benefit manager, not even knowing what a PBM stood for, didn't recognizing what the role it would play in the industry. But as the story goes, I ended up in the underwriting department, mainly because I understood Excel and it was a data entry way for me to begin. And my supervisor went on her honeymoon and I had to take some phone calls. And the next thing I knew, somebody was asking me what I was putting into data entry. And so I, with my fresh out of college background, started going into Excel, started really understanding what I was talking about. And the next thing I knew, he asked me to go to a meeting. And I never looked back, Saul. So I started really learning the health insurance side through brokers who worked with pharmacy benefit managers, stayed there for 23 years, really understanding pretty much every component that exists within the pharmacy benefit landscape. EHIM went through an acquisition in 2022, and I stayed on. We were purchased by another family-run firm, much larger pharmacy benefit manager, which gave me just more insight to how the world worked. And at some point, I just felt it was time for chapter 2. And in the midst of that, to kind of give you the background, I did a lot of podcasts during the pandemic. Like anybody, we had to figure out how to keep our livelihoods going. And so during one of those podcasts, somebody made a joke that I was the PBM Princess. And I say, I don't know if that's a compliment. I do like paying for it. I have a lot and I make a lot of shopping analogies to explain this complicated industry. And the next thing I know, Saul, I was at a conference and people were saying, oh, there she is. That's the PBM Princess. And first I was like, I'm going to listen to this podcast.
That's funny.
And then I realized, oh my God, I have a built-in brand. And so before I knew it, this nickname PBM Princess was who I was known for, recognized at conferences and speaking panels. And so when I launched my consulting firm 13 months ago, it was what I named it.
That was going to be one of my questions. So thank you for outlining the history there. And it's so fascinating where a career can take you and the significance of whether it be life events, world events on those decisions and where you end up. And so fast forward, you had the chance to be inside of a PBM for 20 years, your stepmom's business. And then you get acquired and you start to see the landscape even further at a larger firm. What made you decide that this was the moment to stop working inside of one of these businesses and start calling it out?
There are a couple things that were happening all kind of simultaneously. First and foremost, I had built a relationship with thousands of healthcare consultants in this country that have relied upon me to guide them. And with any acquisition, things are going to change. That can be good, that can be bad. I think that the best acquisitions are where you learn how to spin all things to be good. But for me, where I sat, it was more about what can I control? What can't I control within various environments? And really wanting to give advice to my brokers that maybe was outside of the box of my employment contract. And not that I didn't love the company that acquired us. They were very good people. It was more so I was ready to flirt with the other side of things. And I think when I started realizing I can't just sell one thing anymore, I want to talk about other things in the industry that could have repercussions to what I do every single day. It was keeping me up at night. And so it's really started to be that. I think when you have a family business, there's some unwritten job security that you can kind of do a lot and still have that security. But when you're somebody like me with thousands of followers on LinkedIn and you want to talk, at some point now, it was no longer a family business. I had to recognize the respect I had for my job, as well as wanting to say whatever I wanted. And so I think that was the beginning of the impetus for me and saying, what if I didn't just sell a PBM? What could I do? And I'm driven, Saul, to really want to make change in this industry. I've always believed that we all have a power of voice, right? You host an Outcomes Rocket, right? You're clearly taking things and blasting them out, quite literally. And if I could do that and I could figure out what messages I wanted to get out there myself and who I wanted to help, how could I do this? And how could I build a business out of it?
Voice was wanting to come out, and where you were was no longer allowing you to do it as big as you wanted to go with it.
I would say that it's not that they didn't allow it. I would say it would have been irresponsible, right? I want to critique PBMs. I'm not anti-PBM either for listeners that are hearing this. I'm more about changing how I think they should function. But when you're inside of it, it's very difficult to have an opinion and also want to befriend competitors, right? I mean, the biggest joke for any sales manager I've ever had was, who am I friends with that year? Because I never like to compete with people. I would like to go after where I thought were bad. And I wanted to just know my competitors. I wanted to understand how everybody's doing different things. And you can only do that when you come to the consulting side.
I love it. So let's shift. We've got a lot of leaders, employers listening to this, and we've done content with the brokers too. What do employers get wrong about their drug spend that costs them the most money?
That it just has to be there. I don't know if we're PG rated on iTunes or PG-13, but I think that
Speak freely.
There's a lot of BS. I'll just go with that and remain a lady. That gets said. My least favorite statement that can come out from a consultant is the claims are the claims, right? At a year, people used it. It is what it is. I never think anything is what it has to be. I think that employers need to understand that the only thing that's inevitable is that people are going to get sick and people are going to need care.
Yeah.
But everything else, you have the power to creatively assemble, and you can leverage a lot of different things that create different outcomes. And what I mean by that is you don't just have to take the renewal that had the best financial proposal on a spreadsheet. There are ways to roll your sleeves up, get creative, and really control the cost. The easiest way I can say it is when you have a fender bender with your car, you actively make decisions on whether you submit something to an insurance company or not, what you want to pay cash for or not. Employers have the power to do that. And they have a lot of ways to educate employees so that they can really mitigate risk while giving employees more of what they really need to begin with.
Yeah, there's more flexibility than you think. Oftentimes it feels overwhelming for folks, right? It's kind of like, man, I don't even know where this is going to end up. And when you think about all of the bankruptcies that happen in this country, a lot of them have to do with healthcare. I think I was looking at the number a couple of years ago, it was 66%. And what was most shocking to me about that number, Rachel, was that half of those were people with insurance.
Yeah.
Based off of what you said, right? You have options, people. Like, you guys can do different things. You don't just have to sign on the dotted line. But then my point was there's fear. And that fear is driven by what's happening out there. So how can people be confident, right? That tends to be the issue here, that it's going to work.
I think that there is confidence. That, again, one thing that I think we're not using to our advantage is data. I think we live in an era where the word transparency is just like thrown around like an expectation. It's part of government, CAA reform. I mean, we're seeing that word be demanded. Yeah. But what is transparency and what do you do with it, right? I mean, transparency came into my world, the pharmacy world, because it's where the most manipulation was happening right now that we could target. Why are drugs so expensive? Why are drugs cheaper in Canada or Israel than they are in the United States? And it's really good because of all the mechanisms and ways that we've created as part of the supply channel. And so everybody first is, we want transparency. We want to know who and where the money is going. The next part of transparency that we've given employers is the right to their claims data. More information than you ever wanted to know going on within your employee workforce. That's why we have HIPAA laws and we have rules within organizations. So it's the right people accessing that data. But it's one thing to have the data. It's another thing to use it. And so when we have access to data, you asked me a few minutes ago, like, what do I wish employers understood? And I kind of went on one tangent. The other thing I wish employers in this country understood, you are the largest payer in healthcare, right? We always think, and I know you talked about payers, and I use air quote now for those listening to this audibly. Payers are typically seen as Blue Cross, United, in my world, the big three, Optum, Express Scripts, CVS Caremark. But that's not the payer. They're the mechanism. The payer is the employer. You are the ones writing checks every month to pay for premiums or claims, depending on how large you are of an employer. And at the end of the day, if the collective voice of our employers, the United States, said we're done, we are done just accepting the industry, we collectively, the employers, are the payer of American healthcare, that's where we're going to see change. And so I rewind that because you say to this last question now, what can we do? How do we trust different things? The trust comes back to the data. If you start looking at the claims that we have demanded employers have access to, then you can make decisions from it and you can start to learn. My favorite thing, the concept that I think is not new as of late, but is becoming more popular, are these direct contracts, right? For creating relationships outside of networks like the old PPO days where you worried if your great hospital was in network and you're paying a premium to access the network before you get these supposed discounts. We're now all in a place where cash prices are sometimes cheaper than what you're paying insurance for.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the case. And so I get back to employers need to trust the data and how to use it so that we can change.
That's great. No, I love that. That's great. So when you made this shift, Rachel, who stopped taking your calls once you started saying this publicly? And was there a day you wondered if you made a mistake?
Well, as I was 5 minutes late for this call, Sissy, because my daughter wanted me to be the one who took her to her dance class and flipped out when I said I had a call. So the days I wonder if I made a mistake are the days when I'm juggling being a mother of elementary age children, a wife to a very amazing husband, and somebody who is trying to run and create a business, right? And so those are the days, but I think that's just called being an entrepreneur. I don't think that's a woman entrepreneur as well. No, nobody has really stopped taking my call. I think that a lot of people are curious what I'm doing. So at 13 months in, I will say nobody has not wanted to talk to me. Even my previous employers working to see how we can do things together.
That's awesome.
Who is going to stop taking my calls the more vocal I get? Are going to be, and again, I'm trying to make this simple so I don't overcomplicate the industry for listeners. I live in this sector of the world where there are hundreds of what I call solution providers, startups, large companies, entrepreneurs who have found a problem within healthcare, a very sub-niche, and built a company around it. Some of those companies are doing it because they figured out a way to make money. And what I mean by that is like maybe they found ways to get drums less expensive, which is something my consulting practice does, but they're charging so much in administrative fees for it that it's outweighing if they would have gone through a Blue Cross to begin with. Those are the vendors that I am starting to probably create not big fans because I am beginning to say you can't solve a problem by creating another one. I'm going to call it out, right? I mean, because you... And so what I'm really picking at are savings solutions in the industry that have come up with their own mechanisms to justify what this supposed savings is, a percentage of savings models where they're charging you a percentage of savings. but you can't justify based on what, right? I mean, here's the PBM Princess. So it's like me saying that I saved all this money going to one store because I didn't go to another in girl math. I'm like, I made money because of that. It's just like, it doesn't work that way. Just like it can't work if what you're basing a percentage of savings on wouldn't have happened to begin with. And so that's who's maybe not so excited about what I'm doing. But my goal really, and I didn't mention this in the beginning, PBM Princess, it's been great. When I have to explain to people why I named that my company, I haven't many times actually, because most people have known who I am all these years.
Yeah.
But we are growing. I'm growing both because we're creating bridges for the good solutions to employers. And I'm building out a mechanism for brokers to be able to sell it. And because I'm growing, the goal is my husband will be joining me at some point.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes. And I decided my husband's email address should not be Levi at PBM Princess. We're actually rebranding. We're going to launch a rebrand in January to PBMP. My website will be thepbmp.com. And really, I'm not losing the princess part, but we're growing and evolving. And my goal is to really change healthcare and do it from a lot of facets.
I love it. I think that's great, Rachel. Congrats on the growth and the progress. I was going to ask you with sort of like the savings models and stuff like that. What's your take on Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Co?
Oh, I love Mark Cuban and Cost Plus Drug Co. I think that they should be given a shot at every single opportunity, just like I believe in fair market. And here's where any employer will know if they have a good solution. Pretty much every employer now, over 20 employees, has access to the top drugs within their group. You may not know who's taking what. And again, that's where you get into HIPAA and the size of your group and the data you can get. But I challenge every employer to look at their top 10 drugs by spend that represent the makeup of your employer group. And if you see especially Humira or Enbrel, those are two medications that are for my brain, of course.
It's like heart medicine, right?
Right. Yes. Thank you. And so you should be able to look those up. Both of those have what are called biosimilars that Mark Cuban has in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands. So the first question you should see is, do you have any biosimilars on your top 10? And then you should be able to go look them up on Mark Cuban's Cost Plus. He makes his prices available for everybody. And if they're not there and you go to your partner who provides you pharmacy benefits and say, I want these claims to go through Cost Plus, it's cheaper, see if they say yes or no. And if they say no, you have a problem. And that is where you know that it's not the best. Mark Cuban is not a solution 100% of the time, but he absolutely is the solution for a number of drugs. And he should have the ability to process those claims at the lowest price for our employers.
That's awesome. I love that value pack nugget that you just shared. What's an average savings that somebody can, on this move alone that you just shared?
60 to 80%, if not more, depending on what you're paying for the brand version.
Massive.
And the other side is the number that you're seeing on your top 10 may not be the actual number because there's rebates involved.
That's true too, yeah.
Paid 12 months after the fact in most cases for employers. Sometimes 9 months, depending on how good your contract is, and you can really get to it.
Interest-free loans?
They're interest-free loans where that you probably didn't need to begin with. It's the 100, again, I'm a shopping girl, so this PBM Princess, it's the nickname. That's the quintessential $100 off coupon at Saks. I probably would never go to Saks, but if I'm going to use the $100 coupon, if you read the fine print, it's typically off of something that's $350 or more dollars. Yeah. It's hilarious because I'm like, oh, I just saved $100, but I never would have bought probably something that was $450 to begin with. Right. And so that's a rebate. It is basically incentivizing somebody to go spend more money. And it's not the perversion part of rebates is it's not really, people don't know about rebates. The employer's not like, oh boy, we want to get $700 back in rebates. But the formulary is being set up to do that. It's set up like, so Mark Cuban's drug is not what's being shown to your patient. It's being shown either not at all or as like a step 3. The patient's being shown the $6,000 drug. That's what's broken for $2,000 back when maybe that drug could have been $450 out the door.
Right. Yeah. These opportunities are everywhere, and I'm happy to see progress. And look, we talked about reform. There's a lot of reform kind of happening, and it's moving into the states and in Congress. Which change actually moves money back to employers, and which one is theater?
I think that passing a law that just says PBM transparency without defining transparency, that is going to be theater, right? I mean, the problem that what we have enabled PBMs to do is play what I like to call whack-a-mole, right? It's like the little gerbil or the mochi coming up over here. And you just got that one down because the government's like, no, that's bad. They're like, okay, well, you didn't say we could do it over here. And so that's what we're doing, right? We've said no spread pricing. A lot of states have taken the stance that, and just to kind of educate listeners, with spread pricing is when the PBM has negotiated a tremendous discount with the network, right? And your employer, you saw you're getting the biggest -%. That's why you went with that contract. But the PBM says, well, we may get that discount, but we may be adding $30 to $50 to the price before you pay it. And that's called spread. That is allowing the pharmacy benefit managers to earn profit on a price they've negotiated. So they're paying the pharmacies less than what they're billing you for. Does that make sense? Again, shopping analogy, it's like 20. I know when I give my kid a $20 bill for the book fair, I'm not getting change, but I made that choice. You should not be making that choice with your PBM that you're just giving them $20 if it's a $4 generic.
Totally.
So with some of the reform, what we've let them do is say, all right, no spread, but we haven't changed in some of the definition of what spread pricing actually is. What happens when they own the pharmacy? Well, is there spread if they are creating the discount off of what they want the discount to be off of? And that's where you're seeing Optum and Express Scripts and Caremark in like big trouble because they own their own mail orders. They own their pharmacies. So if they're selling a discount and we've now told them you can't pay the pharmacy more than the discount, now they're like, okay, great. Well, we get to set what the price is to begin with before we discount it. And so it's like whack-a-mole. Let me just let their pharmacies make a crap ton of money. And so I think that when you pass a law, it says you can't do one thing, but then you are allowing all these other things on the other side. It's like, we're not going to see anything change.
Yeah. And with policy reform and such, do you think that it's just the need for more education for some of the policymakers or?
Oh, I think it's all across the board. Yes. Yeah. I am going to plug, I did help co-produce a documentary called Side Effects May Include. If you want to put that in the notes with this podcast.
Sure. Is it is the documentary available?
The documentary is available upon request. And so
I love it.
I link. So basically I have distribution rights. I just have to have the name and email of who I'm sending it to. And you can watch the 45-minute. I will also give 10 copies of my book that I did that goes along with it. The pocket companion to the documentary. So if you want just...
I would love a copy.
Yeah, I'll get you a copy and I'll mail 9 other listeners who want to request one. We'll give them a book. But, the idea is that the employer, if we're really going to have reform, right? If we're really going to do something, we need education. We need everybody to see this video and really understand how did we get here? We need employers to actually know the true cost of the medication, know how everybody why people are where they are at in the supply chain, right? The logical person thinks, oh, pharmacy bought drug, my PBM negotiated price of drug goes out. It doesn't work that way. There are no less than 13 revenue areas that could happen with every transaction. That's how many people can make money in Spain. And then you wonder why our drugs are that much more than every other country. And so once you start to have your own data, you can audit it. You can go to the location to see where the best deal is. That's where we start appropriating the true net cost of drugs and what they cost in this country. And that's when you reform it. And that's when, to me, PBMs should be really no different than credit card processing machines. They should be transactional and very low pennies per time when somebody uses them. And that is not the case because everything else just has to prove that all this noise isn't just a press release, right? We've got to actually do something about it.
I love that, Rachel. Look, I'm glad you're doing what you do, rooting for you and your team to get this issue out there. Glad we're having a part in getting the message out there. If people wanted to reach out to you and learn more about the business, the documentary, the brand updates, where can they reach out?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Rachel Strauss. It does say the PBM Princess, so you cannot miss me. You can also find me on Instagram at the PBM Princess, or you can email me, Rachel at Rachel M as in Meredith Strauss.com.
Outstanding, Rachel. Thank you so much for that. Folks, there you have it. Drugs don't have to be that expensive. You have options. Things are changing. In the show notes, you're going to find all the ways to get in touch with Rachel and her team So make sure you take advantage of that. I'll definitely be checking out the documentary and book and reporting back to you guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. And Rachel, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us.
Thank you for having me.